Hi everyone. Today I'd like to talk about managing high-risk innovation in acrobatics based on my experience with the aerial Russian swing act that I created for the Beatles LOVE by Cirque Du Soleil. I'll explain how I got myself into that situation, how I managed the risk, and most importantly, how I stayed alive. I'd also like to share a few thoughts on developing new acrobatics and why it's important for the future of circus to foster a culture of innovation that doesn't shy away from risk. My act was unique for Russian swing in that it took place 31 feet above the ground. The swing had about an 8-foot radius, which meant that when I was inverted and the swing was upside down, I was close to 40 feet off the stage floor. So typically Russian swing is used to launch acrobats from the swing into the air, but that was not my vision. I mean, that may be fun, but what I really wanted to do was surf the swing. So what in the heck was going on in my head that gave me a different vision for an existing discipline? I grew up doing gymnastics and started when I was 7 years old, but I quit gymnastics as a teen to surf for a few years. I also spent time skateboarding vert ramps when the surf was flat. When I was 17, I returned to gymnastics for a few years, only to quit again to pursue snowboarding. To me, Russian swing was like a new kind of board sport, one that eventually I found that I could get inverted on. When I joined Cirque in April of 2000, I was cast to be a pusher on Russian swing, and I arrived in Montreal with no clue. I mean, I had an open mind, a bit of pluck, I was ready for some fun, but on my first day, I remember getting to the studio and I said, all right, let's see this Chinese swing and these Russian poles. And I was immediately corrected there. They said, no, it's a Russian swing in Chinese poles. So I had no idea, but I was just ready to go. Like, let's see. Yeah, in retrospect, I think I was really lucky because the first time I stepped on a swing, I had an immediate affinity for it. And it felt like a combination of dropping into a wave or pumping the transition of a skate ramp. I just fell in love with the feeling straight away, and I thought, oh, I like this is fun, and it just related to everything that I'd done in my life before I got to Cirque. And after 4.5 months of very intense training, I went off to join Saltimbanco as a house troupe member. When I was doing my job on Russian swing in Saltimbanco, pushing people off the swing, I'd find moments right after that to play. And I'd recreate that feeling that I was surfing or skating. So as time went by and I got more and more comfortable pumping and carving the swing, and the swing got higher and higher into the vertical zone, I found that I was limited by my need to hold on to the swing. And every time I got slightly over vertical, my hands in the traditional position would start to lose their grip. So you would hold the swing like this. And so when I get upside down, if you can imagine, I was like pushing this way onto the swing, and it was extremely difficult. And as I tested the limits of going well past vertical, I found the exact spot where if I pushed any further and got any more inverted, I'd rip off the poles and disconnect from the swing, which of course was really bad news. So one day when I was playing, I just switched my hand position on the pole. So I flipped it upside down, basically, which made it very uncomfortable in the horizontal world, but I had some curiosity and I pushed the swing higher and higher, almost vertical just to see, and suddenly I had grip. So I went from here to here. And as you can imagine, as you get upside down, you can hang off that position. So, you know, discovering this hand position opened up a whole world of inverted potential, possibility. Yeah, as a historical note, the only way someone had done a 360 on a swing back in the early 2000s was to strap their feet and hands to the swing, basically attach themselves to it and hold on super tight. But then you're stuck in one position going around like that. So, but now I found that when I was upside down, all I needed to do is hang from the swing and it became very, very peaceful and very easy. This hand position changed everything. This was the key, the eureka moment. Yeah, so I ended up lobbying with the artistic director at the time, Pierre Parisienne, thanks Pierre, to do a 30-second solo on the swing, and they agreed to give me the spot. So I put together a little series of tricks, and I was always searching for that amazing feeling of balancing upside down on the tip of a triangle. So if you can imagine getting the swing to just perfectly stop like that, challenging.
When I first came to the studio over 3 years ago to learn Russian swing, I was surprised and ecstatic to find that the swing felt oddly familiar. It was just like my skateboard ramp back home. This fact eventually led me to develop an array of skate-like tricks on the swing, and later to imagine what one could do with a swing that was created specifically to amplify the potential for skate-inspired skills.
A few years later, just prior to the Love creation, I was working at Cirque Du Soleil's IHQ in Montreal, developing new acrobatics in a brand new department called Nouvelle Performance Acrobatique. And I had a desk upstairs where I spent hours upon hours playing with sticks and glue and Legos and string and magnets and springs, all kinds of stuff. And downstairs, I had a Russian swing set up in the studio, and I could play on it anytime, and you know, boy did I took advantage. So I'd leave my desk a couple times a day for swing sessions. It was a fertile environment to create and an extraordinarily exciting time at Cirque. We were developing new ideas for future Cirque du Soleil shows, and the culture of innovation was strong. This was about the time when I started creating new tricks. I had a solid base of pushing flyers off of swing in Saltimbanco for 3 years, plus I had about a year of performing that solo. Now I started to really push what was possible. Every day, a bit more exploration, pushing movements further and further. I was starting to put together a whole new collection of tricks, and I started to wonder if an act were possible. All this development work culminated in a presentation at a warehouse in La Chaîne for the director of the Beatles LOVE, Dominic Champagne. Thanks to Dan Cola's egging on, at the end of our presentation, I jumped on the swing and I went through a list of skills I've been making up. Afterwards, Dominic came up to me and he said, "So what are you doing next year?" And that's how I got my spot on the Beatles LOVE. Different safety options were considered to manage the significant risk of being so high in the air, but as it turned out, none were feasible. The best option was a safety harness tether system. It was basically a belt harness with a single loop on my hip and a static line stretching to the axle of the swing where there was a 360-degree swivel. The system was not ideal, and I had some very sketchy moments toying around with it. It got stuck between my legs, it wrapped around my neck, it made my act near impossible. During this process, a rigger pulled me aside and showed me a short video of a dummy taking a 6-foot fall wearing that same single point harness system that I was playing with. It broke the poor dummy's hip.
Here you can see that even though the shock-absorbing lanyard did its job and kept the forces on the dummy's body down below the 1,800-pound limit, his spine still would have suffered serious damage from that fall with that positioning belt.
I thought, well, what would happen to me if I took a fall when the swing was inverted? With no other option, I chose to do the act free, meaning no safety line. I spoke to my coaches and I won their support. We knew it would be something special, but in order to make it happen, we needed Guy Laliberté to give his approval. We invited Guy to a private presentation and they locked the doors to the studio. I put on a harness and I climbed a rope ladder 31 feet up the swing where I took off the safety harness and glanced down at the concrete floor. They looked pretty small down there. Fortunately, the presentation went well. I controlled my adrenaline, performed my routine, and most importantly, I didn't die. That ended up being my long-term goal with the act. When I got back down to the ground, Guy shook my hand and it was on. If it weren't for the vision and trust of Daniel Collat and Gilles St. Croix, Guy wouldn't have never been brought there to the studio to give approval. That was old school circus level risk. 10 years later, I had successfully performed thousands of acts and turned my hair a nice shade of gray. See? Wow. Here's a clip of the swing in the studio where I presented to Guy. Notice the safety net that ensconced the swing. My life would have been a lot easier had we kept that net. Yeah, the LOVE creation was hard. Adjusting to the height was intense. Plus the lights in the theater were super bright. Everywhere I'd look would blind me. I would squint my eyes really small and just try to feel my way through the act. That environment forced me to manage a very high level of risk. It was my responsibility, and I didn't want to let Guy or Gilles or my coaches down by falling. So it really changed my life. Yeah, in order to protect myself from huge mistakes and the company, I felt that responsibility. I needed to imagine all possible situations that could go wrong on that swing. So I spent hours and hours in bed visualizing my act, pinpointing issues I might have, vividly and morbidly imagining mistakes and conceiving escapes. And my hands would sweat and I'd wipe them down on the sheets, and I did that for months. So it took about 3 years and over 1,000 shows before I finally became comfortable up there on that swing and that height in that intense environment. But then it became like this pure zen, this electric focus. It was like crystal clear fun when things were going well. And when they weren't going well, it was these, occasional sickening jolts of god-awful adrenaline, like some demon grabbing me by the throat and shaking me violently. Gah! It was horrible. I never fell, but I did have some sketchy moments, but it was only me who knew. And, in the end, I survived, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I might have a little PTSD, but the act was incredible, and I'm proud to have done that and survived. So one of Cirque du Soleil's greatest creators, Andre Samar, once told me that everything's already been done. And I thought, has it though? Like, I would argue that different perspectives present original opportunities for innovation. And from Andre's traditional perspective on acrobatics, he'd exhausted all the possibilities. He created wonderful material for Cirque du Soleil, and I know he spent countless hours over years dreaming stuff up. But he could never approach a Russian swing from a board sports, skating, snowboarding, surfing mindset. And it was this very approach that opened up new material on an existing apparatus, a discipline that hadn't changed in hundreds of years. We have to ask, how do we connect with that special essence that makes creativity happen? Is it environmental? Is it experiential? Is it the sum total of our movement experience in this world? How do we take our life experience and apply that to existing disciplines and generate new ideas? How do we grow an idea from the seed of possibility to fully realized potential? Well, first you need to find your idea. And so look at what you're already good at and think about how you might apply that to existing disciplines. Maybe it's mixing, ballet with straps, or maybe it's putting contortion on a swinging platform, or, countless other possibilities. Once you've found your area of exploration, you approach the unknown with calculated risks that push tiny boundaries. On my swing, I'd push a trick a centimeter further each time I try it. By ever so carefully testing the limits and mitigating risk with in-depth contemplation of potential mistakes, you can explore possibilities in a prepared and fun environment. So I believe that the future of creative development depends upon the intermingling of disciplines. That's where unique acrobatic flowers will happen. Like anything in this world that strives to flourish, acrobatic evolution has to happen for circus to remain relevant, and human performance always has to win over technological advancement. So, the audience should never walk away without any emotion. Innovators need to remember that managed risk on stage is what inspires awe. And as an industry, we need to value risk and innovation over the status quo. Like Mr. Kite said from the song in my act, he said, over men and horses, hoops and garters, lastly through a hogshead of real fire. In this way, Mr. K challenges the world. So embrace the unknown, use your life experience to innovate. You know, innovation is a function of perspective, and your perspective is unique. So get out there and innovate and invent new stuff, and all the best. Yeah, just one final note. As a coach, I would be amiss if I didn't throw out a word of caution. So if you just watch this and, you know, you're super pumped up to try new things, you know, hold your horses. A little self-assessment is in order. So ask yourself, have you mastered the basics? Are you confident in your skills? Are you starting to explore new realms of possibility in your mind? And can you visualize the movements you want to try? If you're not sure about this, then you're probably not ready. And, you know, this is fine. Think about it this way. Refinement precedes creative variation, okay? And to get to the refinement stage, you need to initiate, acquire, and then spend time consolidating. Then comes the refinement stage. Finally, you're at the doorstep, and centimeter at a time, my friends. So as a last word, there's great science on this. Google IARCV model for guidance. Good luck.